obviously, we're getting many more people sort of interested in the actual Sicon modules in conjunction with Sage 200 to accentuate what they need. And one of the big kind of requirements people are asking for are things around document management within the modules and Sage 200 itself. Now, I know there's a manual way of doing this and there's a more automated way of doing this, but look, maybe just for the benefit of anybody I can share the video with, if you can give me a sort of an insight into what Sicon Documents does, how it interrelates with 200, the other modules, and then we'll talk a little bit about the automation bit at the end.
Yeah, no, of course. And as with the projects, one, appreciate you giving us the time just to talk about it, really, Howard. So hopefully, if anybody watches this, it's useful. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Sicon Documents, it's the Ronsteel of our portfolio, because it does what it needs to. Everything in the name, there's documents, and it's about being able to go digital, storing the documents against transactions, typically is in Sage, and mean you can throw away the hard copy. Now, what we've actually got is we've got three elements to it. We've got core documents, document distribution, and then we've got the OCR, the automation piece. Core documents, yeah, it's about attaching against, say, most of the time it's purchase invoices. That's what people are looking for.
Yeah,
but actually you can store documents in other areas. And it's interesting you mentioned projects earlier, Howard, because I'll talk a bit about the tie-in with projects and some of the benefits you can then see in terms of any documents that are linked to that particular project. So what we've basically done, if I just focus on the core documents first, is we've kept it simple. You've got two licenses. You've got a scan and view, and you've got a view only. So a scan and view user license means that person's able to index or scan and attach documents and view them. A view only means they can't do any of the indexing, but they can view. And all you do is you buy the appropriate, their names, but you just link them to your Sage users. So inside of Sage. And what that means is they then get appropriate buttons to be able to attach. Now, what it does is we store the link in the database, and then we put a copy of the file on the server in Sage's attachments folder. So it's then backed up with your Sage routine, and you can, as I say, you can get rid of the paper document. If you've got a scan and view, you also get document distribution. I'll talk a bit about that later. And then the automation is the OCR. So if you're a scan and view user, you've got the automation module. We can you can email them up and it will read information off them. But if it's all right with yourself, you okay if I just show a little bit on the screen? Sometimes I think to visualize it makes a bit more sense. So let me just share my screen here, so just people can see what I'm talking about. So in terms of Sicon Documents, as with projects, for those who saw that, you'll have a Sicon Documents folder. I won't bother going through the settings, but there's different setup. But basically what I'm talking about here, and I'm going to pick on a purchase invoice, which is what most customers use it for. So as I come in, add an invoice, just as I normally would. So for AB Cookers there, I'm talking about this add docs button here. So as a user, I've got a license allocated and I'm able to add docs. You can create little folders that you want to put them in as well. So if I just say it's an invoice, and as we look through here, scan. So it's interesting now, I'd say probably in the 90% of customers now, the vast majority, they get their purchase invoices via a PDF. Most of the time now. Very rarely is it paper, but there are still some with paper. So if you've got a scanner attached to your local machine with Twain drivers, brilliant, put the paper in there, click scan, and it can fire it through as a PDF. Most customers, they've got a network scanner, they might scan it centrally and you can pick the file up from there. You can even drag and drop, or this is the bit I love. If you've got two monitors and perhaps you've got your email over to the side here, you can literally just drag and drop the document onto the button.
Onto the button itself.
And then you can save, and you can see on the right hand side there's all this metadata that it's going to attach. Now what the end result is, I'm just going to cancel that and I'll show you somewhere I've got them earlier, is once that's stored, if we go into the transaction inquiry, you get this extra column on the right hand side with document count. So just on the right hand side, and if you can see at the bottom here, I've also got my view docs button. So because I'm that scan and view user, I've got both. If I was a view only, I'd have the view docs. If I haven't got a license, I can't do either. But if I now pick here, and I'll pick this particular one here, and I go view docs, then it opens up. There's the thumbnail of the document itself. I could open it and print it. And in fact, if we think about Outlook again on my machine, if I click on email, I just need to allow privileges there. There it is. It's going to open up and I can actually email that attachment out now to the person who wants a copy of that purchase invoice. So for those customers, especially coming from purely paper-based, it can be scary because, of course, you're now moving away from other processes, and there are other tools in our toolkit which can enhance for approvals and that, which I'm sure we can talk about at another time.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure it's a case on what you're showing me there. You're shortening the number of steps here also. So if you're talking to a client and you have it against that actual transaction, instead of opening it up, opening the file up, save it, then you put it into an actual email and you send it out, you can just go email that directly from the transaction itself.
Absolutely. And the question we often get is, well, that's great, I know where the transaction is, but what if I don't? Well, not a problem at all. But we also then give you in the folder here, we've got tools such as a document search. I mean, there's a lot more to this, Howard, but I'll kind of give some of the basics.
Yeah.
But you can see all the other areas that we store documents, and I'll talk a bit more about some of those in a moment. But if I'm looking for a purchase invoice, so I know it's an invoice, and I know it was from Ernie Swinton, I can do something as simple as this. And that's now going to come back and it's saying, well, there's 80 attachments against purchase invoice transactions for Ernie Swinton. And I've now got my thumbnail in the top right hand corner and I can search for it. But I could extend that search if I wanted to. And of course, I could email it from the bottom there. But I could extend that search by saying, well, I know the date, or in fact, actually, they've told me the reference. So I don't even need to find, enter the supplier. I could just enter the reference of the invoice that somebody's looking for. So it's about access to that rather than find the transaction and then have to find the hard copy somewhere else. So that's really the first kind of use of it. We tried to keep it nice and simple, but I did mention the buttons aren't just purchase invoices. If I go to amend the account, for example, I've got buttons here, add docs, and again, you can have different folders. So this is great, if you do credit checks for your customers. I mean, obviously this is a purchase ledger account, but you'll have it on your sales ledger account, sales order processing, purchase order processing. It's even on bank reconciliation as well. The two more things, and then I'll kind of move on to the distribution. The two other bits that stand out for me is, first one, if I'm looking at the transaction from the nominal side, I'll also see the documents as well linked to that transaction. So, and that's quite a key one. Often you're looking at it from the nominal, you don't want to have to back out, find the purchase invoice. No, we link the two. And then lastly, if I have a look at this top one here, because it's one I did the other week. This one's actually a purchase invoice that's been matched to a PO. Now, the purchase order, I put an attachment against the PO. So I think it might have been a quote. It's probably a barcode now in my demo environment, but kind of actually you can see there's two attachments. Sorry, what am I doing? Not add documents. I've clicked on the wrong button there. It's not idiot proof there, Howard. But if I go to, can you see here? You've got invoice and orders.
And it's got
so there's two. So it's actually, because I've linked the invoice. Now I could go to the PO and find the document, but because there's now a transaction, I've now got multiple documents which I can see as well. Yes, it was a barcode as it pulls down. So we've got some really clever things. And I mentioned the tie into projects. Well, actually, if I look at Sicon projects here, and I'll just bring up a projects list, and I'll use my good old Dublin Hotel project, where you've got Sicon projects installed, you've got Sicon documents as well. Any documents that are attached to transactions linked to this particular project, whilst I could drill down, find the purchase invoice and find it that way from the transaction inquiry screen, you will also have a Sicon documents tab, and there's all of the invoices, and I can just click on, but not even just that, there's stock items, so we can attach images against stock items, which I'll talk about when we get to the distribution piece. You can see there's purchase order attachments. So it really starts to just join everything together. And again, even further, you'll notice there's the add docs buttons if we want to attach, I don't know, it might be job specs or anything like that.
So I have it right then. So at purchase order, purchase invoice level, you're attaching a document, and if it's associated with the given project, you're not having to add it multiple times.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. For me, it's a real. We added this probably it's about 3 versions ago, maybe 4 versions. really powerful tool that actually a lot of customers probably aren't aware is there. But I think it's great when you're looking at your overall project, just being able to see everything there, and you can filter it on the bottom right as well.
Yeah.
So,
No. Yeah.
sorry, Howard.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's kind of the attachment side. And I said there are other tools. We've got a cracking little utility to split a PDF up into the number of pages that it's got. So if it's a 10-page PDF, we can split it into 10 separate PDFs. So there's a cracking tool you get as well. But I wanted to just touch on the distribution side. So distribution is outbound documents. So things like, so if I come back just into the document settings, no extra cost for this. If you've got a scan and view user license and you're on the right version that this was included in, you've already got it, which is great. So in the settings, and you'll have this separate document distribution tab here. So these are all the different areas that we cover. So for example, it might be a sales order, goods dispatch note. And what we can start to do is we can start to add PDF header pages, a PDF background, could even be things like terms and conditions as well on that. So when we send it out, it's going to take Sage's rather bland, in my opinion, layouts that you've got and start to really sort of make them branded just like your corporate tone. So you can see the different areas here. We've got a number of different options for those customers who, I don't know, perhaps you're dealing outside of the UK, so it might be a multi-language, or it might be you're dealing with the UK if you're in Ireland. You've got different terms and conditions. You can actually set criteria up as well based on, in this, for example, here, this is for the sales order. So we can say, well, it's a customer where an analysis code, or it could be the country code or something, is UK. Well, then attach a different terms and conditions. So there's lots that we can do with this, which is great, and it's fairly easy to set up. But we can take it one step further as well, where we've got email templates. So if I pick my goods dispatch again, I think that's the one I've got set up. We can start to do a bit of mail merge as well with a bit of HTML. So that's your body of your email. So we can send these out. Now we can take it one step further as well, Howard. So I mentioned earlier about stock items that we can link, and you can see here, this is where I get quite excited about it, because it's once you've set it up, all of a sudden it starts to be really quite powerful. So if I pick my espresso machine, you can actually store attachments against the espresso machine in this example, or against your stock items. You can see we've got the add doc button here, and we can say, well, is it an image, is it a specification, or is it a drawing? So if I come to the Sicon, so not the Sicon one here, if I go, I've got a product image, for example, here. Now in this example, I'm just going to set this one up quite quickly, because I think this is a good one just to show. Is if I go to my sales order list, and I'm going to create a very quick sales order here. Again, this is where we start to pull everything together. So ignore this pop-up and the other one, that's other Sicon add-ons. Just going to add my espresso machine to the order. Just make sure that we've got some stock allocated, so it's ready to dispatch. Absolutely fantastic. There we go. Again, I've got all of our add-ons, Howard. So if you fancy going through all of those at some stage, give me a shout, because it's always some good nuggets of bits in there for people. But 5709, lovely job. None of that's any different. That's all kind of bog standard Sage. What most customers would do now is that's ready for dispatch, and you'll dispatch your items. So that's fine. We're going to dispatch 2. And normally you click save. We've got this email and archive button. So what we're going to do is, if I click the email and archive button, a few things now are going to happen. First one is we should see my Outlook down here flash in a moment. And that's just because I've got to set correct admin privileges. Then you can see that there. So let me just allow access. Now it's created me a draft. And if we look at the system here, you'll notice it's still sent the print one in the background, because sometimes you might still want to print a copy. But sat in my draft ready to go, and it's about settings. It could just automatically send.
Got
But
it.
if I
Yeah.
open this email, there's my terrible effort at HTML, but I'm not designer anymore, but I've got the sales order number in there. I've
Yeah.
also got the sales order number, say it's dispatched. I've got my dispatch note
Yeah.
there with all my PDF
what you showed
backgrounds,
earlier on. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Very
lovely.
good.
It's also attached the image and the specification. So it's taken those attachments that I had against the document.
Excellent.
And all that's great. But so that will have been emailed out. But if I close this and this, and I go back to my sales order, what it's also done is
Updated with the
against the
documents.
sales order, we look at the view docs at the bottom. Again, let's just ignore that. View docs here. There's a copy of the dispatch note
Very good.
against the sales order. So again, it's one of those, just from once it's all set up, you click in email and archive. And of course, I've done it on a one at a time sort of thing. But if it was your order acknowledgements or your invoices, sales invoices, for example, and you're doing a load of them, all of a sudden that can fire off, and that's really quite powerful.
Very good.
Now, the last one I want to talk about is it's a huge topic actually, Howard, is accounts payable. Everybody's talking AP, and it's and you'll see a lot there where it goes, 100% automation, never touch an invoice again, never have to. That's a load of rubbish. We all know there's always going to be certain circumstances where you've got to get involved, and I think that's really important. That certainly my experience of dealing with finance professionals, they don't want to lose that control. They don't want things just firing in without some level of control. But we are at an age, as I said, where that document distribution, a lot of systems are doing that now. A lot of people are sending their invoices electronically. Well, we might as well make use of that. So that's where the document automation comes in. So as I said, it's a separate module. It's what you add on top. You buy bundles for your documents. And then once it's installed, you do some settings in terms of what's your validation rules. So things like in my demo environment here, I will validate that I've got purchase order, but I can override things on a purchase ledger account if it's just a utility bill that's never going to have a PO. Do I do goods received? Do we want to check that the invoice is inside a month, for example? So there's lots of validation, and we can override those as well. But the idea behind it is, as a user, I can come in, and there's two ways of getting this in. You can either have a unique email address and you just email your documents to it, or you can just drag and drop them onto here. Is it an invoice? Is it a credit note or purchase order? You'd have a unique email address for each of these. This is the key one. I'll come back to that one shortly. But you drag it in, and basically, as it come through, there's one I prepared earlier. You do train them, and training's dead easy. You just you train the first few for each of the invoices, tell it where the invoice number is, and the system learns over time. You can even do line level extraction and then match the lines to, this is one actually, I think, where the quantities on the lines are less than the PO, and it's just going to match what we've goods received. But you can train the invoice, and the idea is over time, it's going to validate, it's going to check, is it happy that the supplier account? It's going to check for duplicates. Is there a duplicate invoice already that's been posted? Speaking about projects, we can actually read the project number off there if necessary. You can tell the system to look for a project number. So that's quite, and again, this is where we're tying all these bits in. But so long as it's past the validation, you might have 100 invoices in here. You can just do a multi-select, select them all, click on process automatically, and it will do all of the processes that Sage wants. It will. So for example, we've got a purchase order, we've done our goods receipt. If I was to process this through, it basically mirrors what Sage does. It's going to match the invoice to the GRN to the PO. It's going to post the invoice, and it's also going to then do this attachment, just as you saw earlier with the all documents piece earlier. All of that's going to be attached, and that's ready to go. So there will be some admin. You've got to do some training. You're going to be checking for the the duplicates. You're going to be checking where it's not, it might be that it doesn't match. And I'm sure you have this, a lot of clients have this on a daily basis. But if you think about the admin savings for going down this versus the costs of buying the bundle versus actually getting somebody in to do this task, all of a sudden it's using technology and really driving it through. So for us, that's a huge winner. But the one that I really like is this purchase orders one. And I don't know if I've got an example already in here. I'm expecting to show this, but have I? No, I don't. But what we've also now added in is you get a sales order from your, you get a purchase order from your customer. You can drag the PO on there, you can train it, and it will create a sales order for you.
Wow.
How
Excellent.
cool is that?
Yeah, so that just reduces that duplication of effort really all over again.
Yeah,
that's very nice. I mean, what's interesting to me, and I have seen some AP systems, and we work with other partners as well. But what's interesting for me here is a couple of things. First thing is that it ties in with the Sicon projects module, that a number of our clients currently have. So it's not just matching up the likes of orders and invoices; it's also allocating it throughout the ledgers themselves. One of the other things, of course, and we're not going to get into it today, is your approvals modules that are external to Sage 200. So for anybody generating sort of purchase requisitions or, other documents, or not other documents, but generating any kind of transactions outside of that, they can view the documents once they come in, either via the automated way or they're allocated through the general scan and view licenses as well.
Yeah,
so that's of a real appeal.
It's a really nice process. We've got a lot of clients where they'll raise a requisition, they'll attach a quote that they had. Once that gets approved, that creates a PO. Well, that then attaches it to the PO, just as you saw the example earlier. You then you could do your goods receive actually through the approvals as well. And of course, you can pick your project from the from this website as well. So all that ties in lovely. Your invoice comes in. We can actually send that out for approval. It can auto approve if it all matches, but because we've got an attachment of the purchase invoice, your user either on their phone or in the web portal, they're able to view a copy of that attachment as well, which I think is really powerful, being able to see the actual invoice. Again, we often see customers where they're putting a stamp on it to say, and then get signatures. Well, use technology. People aren't in the office. We're very much a fluid process now, and then that gets updated. We can even sign off the suggested payments run with them seeing those invoice attachments, so you get this whole ecosystem. And again, just tying that back to projects, they can see the project inquiry, so it's great for your PMs just from a web browser to be able to see the projects rather than have the need to get into Sage. So I know we're getting carried away a bit, Howard, and there's other bits,
but I think
this is the possibility.
What's interesting to me is, right, just to nail a particular point for anybody who's going to view this actual video, right, is that we have everything open here. We've got a lot of actual modules here outside of, within Sage 200 and outside of Sage 200 via Sicon. So any particular user would, you can designate or delegate exactly what specific functions they have access to. So it's just simply purchasing, or if it's sales or whatever it is, they'll only have that particular viewpoint. But the interesting thing is that if you're utilizing something like the documents piece, it feeds throughout. So even though they mightn't have access to the purchasing side, if they have access to the project side, they'll be able to see any of the actual documents that came in from another area to sort of show that.
Correct, yeah. And the other thing I would say, just whilst I've got the screen being shared here, how it is, the bits we're going through on this right-hand side, there's loads of information if people want to follow up and have a quick look on the website. But I always point people here as well, have a look at Sicon documents, the screenshots and descriptions as well. So there's a wealth of information in there to have a look through before. But from my perspective, there's nothing better than sometimes just engaging one-to-one. If people want a deeper I can't even say that, deeper dive, that's the one.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
Just put my teeth back in there, Howard. But yeah, I mean, it come back to what I opened with. For me, it's the Ron seal of our portfolio. It does what it needs to do. Does what it says on the tin.
Well, yeah, like I say, the interesting thing for me and my particular clients that I'm thinking of, the inquiries that I get, is that no matter what module they're actually working with, it can feed throughout. So, that's the appeal of that. So, okay, all right. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking me through that. So, I think anybody looking at that will get a good sense of what it can actually do. So yeah, perfect. If you don't mind, I'm going to share this with a couple of other people
Yeah,
as
no
well, so
worries.
they can actually have a look at it. And thanks again, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Hey, no worries. No, thanks for your time, Howard. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Take care. Bye bye.